Hello! I'm NecroPolo, and today we are quite noisy here. You know, it's minus 15 Celsius outside. I had to turn on some heater devices, and they are quite loud. So if you can hear some noise, besides me speaking about shit, then it's the heater. So anyway, a couple of days ago, my Windows 10 audio production machine started to develop strange things. To cut the story short, I ended up reinstalling Windows and all my audio stuff. I wanted to do it anyway because my previous system was sort of bloated. Nowadays, I'm using just a fraction of the number of plugins than back in the day, where this pack started to grow and grow and bloat and grow, that finally I decided to cut. In the practice, I don't need 75 EQs, 92 compressors and stuff like that. Just a few essentials. So, today I'm going to talk about things in my toolbox. Okay, my weapon of choice when it comes to a digital audio workstation is Reaper. I've been using Reaper for over 10 years, I guess. It was given to me by my friend Vincenzo. So he gave me this pen drive with a little sticker on it in case of emergency. As it happened, on a location recording, my actual software that I used, that was Pro Tools. I don't have too much love for Pro Tools. And let me stop there. So, when Pro Tools crashed and I just couldn't restart it, couldn't reinstall it, couldn't revive or do anything to save the project. So I took this little emergency pen drive, plugged it in, and in 5 minutes I could continue the recording. And since that, there is no turning back for me. This tiny, reliable Japanese car of a recording software became my companion in the last decade. It's proving itself every day. I don't know the exact number because I haven't counted them all, but most probably I created over 1,000 tracks with Reaper. Not to mention videos, because Reaper is also a video editor. Quite minimalistic but efficient, I think. And Reaper comes with a lot of updates. I joined somewhere around version 3, and now it's version 6, and everything is backwards compatible. Calling Reaper as my ticket out of Pro Tools hell. That would be very unpolite of me. You know, you must be positive and polite. Well, it's true, regardless. So, next. For a long time, I could not reach the level of my favorite albums. So despite the fact that I spent a lot of time on mixing, then the final level just didn't make it. The result wasn't loud enough and punchy enough. But everything changed when I started to discover mastering. Normally, it's a super complicated process, but fortunately there are some tools that make it quite simple. So, Isotope Ozone is always the final mark on my sentence when it comes to mixing. I started to use it around version 3. I skipped 4, I used 5 definitely, I skipped 6 and 7, and now I'm using 8. Before the time I became a freelancer, I worked for studios, and I was lucky because they were open-minded. They developed both the digital and the analog domains. It was around 2000, the dawn of plugins. So I had the luck to use plugins side by side with stuff like Omnia processors, TC finalizers, Waze, Manly, Neve, AMEC, and a lot of very expensive stuff that I would never be able to maintain and afford in the first place anyway. So despite the fact that I think that outboard devices still have some edge over digital processing, by version 5, Isotope Ozone became quite a powerful tool. Actually, it's not worse than this hyped, very expensive stuff, just different, requiring different approach. So when I became a freelancer and I built my own production toolkit, going the Isotope Ozone way was a no-brainer. So when it comes to revolutionary things, I think my drum sounds sucked before 2005. But then I tried out the first Easy Drummer and I was relieved. I said to myself, okay, from this point, my drums will sound okay. My drum tracks became alive instantly. And it improved my live drum mixing as well, because now I had some direction and I could reverse engineer. What the fucking word? Yes, so it changed everything. After so many years using Superior Drummer 2, I realized that I'm still a songwriter, and I spend way too much time on tweaking Superior 2. So nowadays I'm using EZD2. I'm much more efficient with that. I don't know. Fewer knobs, less options, more music. At least for me. It also comes with some very good expansion packs. Just like this one. This is my favorite. It was recorded by one of my all-time favorite engineers, Mr. Andy Sneap. This guy is flat out amazing. And it's true for the drummer. John Tempesta is one of my favorite ones ever, playing in a lot of my favorite bands, like White Zombie, Testament or Helmets. John is a class act, and his playing is insane. And somehow, even if a tune track is a little robot that plays your grooves, still John's character comes through. Well, we live in a great time. Okay, next one. So when it comes to simple plugins. Simple, I mean not simple, but baseline plugins. Compressors, EQs, spectral and dynamic tools. The plugins that are essential for me come from Stillwell Audio. I started to use them 15 years ago, and it's quite unbelievable how well these were made, even back in time. What these do is giving a little bit different character from the mainstream. I mean, plugins have their own color as well. So if 95 of albums are mixed with, Big Kahuna plugins, then everything will sound Big Kahuna plugins, And Stillwell stuff has its own taste. A pretty good one. It's a little bit different. This EQ is my most important tool during mixing. 1973 is basically a drums EQ, but you can find it on my bass guitar channels, on my synth channels, of course, vocal tracks, sometimes even on a master bass. So it's quite a versatile thing. My other favorite from Stillwell is a very simple but very effective program compressor called Major Tom. This thing is a strange beast. It definitely takes some time to get used to it, but then it is very flexible and super quick to work with. So if I had nothing else but 1073 and Major Tom, then probably I would be able to mix an album. The next one, Melda plugins. Melda Production is a home of an ample of oddball effects. You can find normal EQs, compressors and stuff like that here, but also an ample of abstract tools that solve problems. Very specific ones sometimes. Melda regards processing from the aspect of sound design. During mixing, you are repeating certain tasks. I mean, a lot. And if applied well, Melda plugins will drastically shrink the time you burn. So you are much more efficient. There's an example that saved my ass a couple of times. Melda Autovolume. Around 2015, I received a mixing assignment that was recorded by someone else, and volume levels were all over the place. I don't know how it happened, maybe someone was running with the microphones or something like that, but it was a mess. So this thing saved me from 10 hours of manual automation setting hell. You must be efficient. So when it comes to a simple mixing, by simple I mean less than 50 tracks. So using these plugins, you can make an initial mix in a couple of hours. So it's bloody amazing. Melda Production plugins save an ample of time. And Melda also provides a pretty fast melting starting pack for free. So if you just start to discover mixing, mastering and audio production, I think this pack gives you everything to start. it includes as few as 40 effects, 37 to be exact. You can find all sorts of compressors, EQs, tools, modulation effects, and an ample of things. A huge starter toolbox. So Melda kicks major ass, I think. The next essential thing for me is Acidizer by Hypersynth. Well, if you listen to my music, then you know that I'm a huge Commodore 64 fan. So it's a Commodore 64 VSTi. Basically, I use it on all of my albums. For all of those dark, heavy pads, I used this one. It sounds amazing right out of the box. And settings are very deep. So I use it even when I compose Commodore 64 music on MIDI, because it can do everything that a Commodore 64 can, and a lot of more. So kudos, Hypersynth, this thing is awesome. Okay, the next one, Waves. To be honest, nowadays I don't use them as many times as I used back in 2010. Around the time I worked for companies and companies had Waves plugins. So when it comes to in-the-box mixing, I think Waves is unavoidable. Especially that they have the best solutions for certain things. Just like Waves Tune Real-Time. This thing is an amazing tool, and its greatness is in its efficiency. So it's super fast to work with and always delivers. So whenever I want to fix vocals, this is my tool. I also use a couple of signatures. My favorite is the CLA pack. Also when I'm doing a pop mix, then GGP is my choice. I like Waves plugins, however I'm in a strange relationship with them. When I ditched Pro Tools and I started to use Reaper, Waves had no Reaper support. But a couple of years later they started to support Reaper, so I started to buy my essentials. So probably I will expand my Waves toolkit. The next one is not a VST or audio production software, but a video production one. Despite the fact that Reaper can be configured as a pretty awesome video editor, there are some things that Reaper just cannot do or cannot do efficiently. So that's where my Vegas Pro takes action. Again, it's a pretty old stuff for me, because I started to use it around its Sony time, around 2002 maybe. And for me it was always more efficient for loop-based music production or video editing, especially. So when it comes to video, I still do a lot of things with Vegas Pro. It always did its job pretty well, so I didn't think about, replacing it. Well, for the sake of experimenting, I will try DaVinci Resolve sometime, because filmmaker friends recommended it. So we will see, but until then, Vegas Pro. So the next one is not an audio production tool at all, but if you're a musician, you have to create a lot of visuals as well. Inkscape is a quite flexible and free vector graphic software. For me, it was quite a freedom to do a lot of stuff needed by myself, like flyers, splash screen, splash screens. Guys, are you serious about this? I mean, this word. Anyway, covers, t-shirts splash screens. Hell, t-shirt splash screens. You nuts. So, why the hell am I doing these speaking videos? I cannot speak. Okay, so when it comes to photo editing and drawing some stuff, I cannot draw, just try. So I use GIMP. It does everything I need. And maybe it's not too much because I'm not a visual sort of guy, but a lot of friends are making amazing things with it. So I think it's a good stuff, especially for a free and open source one. So that's about my production toolkit. Reaper, Isotope Ozone, TuneTrack, Stillwell, Melda Production, Hypersynth, Waves, Vegas Pro, Inkscape, GIMP, and that's it. And before getting the wrong idea about it, This is not a sponsored video at all. These tools help me a lot, so I sort of honestly appreciate them. NecroPolo out. See you somewhere in time.